Good evening, everyone. My name is Brenton McGee. Thank you so much for watching these Meet the Musician lectures here at Friends Home in Kennett. It is my honor and joy to bring these lectures and bring guest musicians from all over the world to present music with us. Today's special guest is a friend of mine who I met a couple months ago, wonderful choral director from Hawaii. Her name is Dr. Erica Glenn. She's the choral director of Choral Activities at BYU, Hawaii. Here is her bio. Dr. Erica Glenn is a current Fulbright Scholar and finalist for the American Prize in Conducting Opera. She holds a position of Director of Choral Activities at Brigham Young University, Hawaii, where she leads the concert choir and university chorale. Dr. Glenn has also directed choirs at Dean College, the American International School of Utah, and Arizona State University, where she conducted the women's chorus, served as chorus master for the School of Music Operas, and taught beginning conducting. She is the founder of virtualchoirconductor.com and a co-founder of the ASU Women's Collaborative. In 2020, Erica became a conducting fellow in the Cortana Sessions for New Music and was hired by the Kennedy Center to generate video content as a music teaching artist. In 2019, Erica received ASU's GPSA Teaching Excellence Award, a Department of State Title VIII grant, and full funding to guest conduct at the Chattanooga Symphony Orchestra. Erica holds a DMA, Doctorate in Musical Arts, in conducting at Arizona State University. That's a really top school in music. A Bachelor's of Music and Master's of Music in Music Theory and Composition at Long East School of Music, and a Master's of Education in the Arts in Education at Harvard University. And you can look up her website at ericakyree.com. It's ERICAKYREEGLENN.com. I met Erica on a personal note when she was looking for some choral singers from a virtual choir. And I was privileged to do that for a semester during this COVID time and got to study with her and really learned about her. She is someone who is very nice, very knowledgeable, very personal. You can ask her any questions because I had a bunch of questions during our time. And she was very gracious. And we are so privileged to have her here to speak for us as a guest. And it's always a joy to know what Erica is doing in the music field. And she's going to bring a wonderful lecture. So without further ado, here is my friend, Dr. Erica Glenn. The floor is yours.
Aloha, everyone. It's so good to be here with you virtually today. Before I switch on my presentation, I just wanted to sort of sit here face to face and say a hello. It is really wonderful, for all of the downsides of COVID, it has taught us all that a lot of things are possible through technology. And geographic barriers sort of disappear when we're able to connect in this way. So I'm grateful to bring a piece of Hawaii to all of you tonight, and to be here with you to share a little bit of my own musical journey over the past couple of years and how that's influenced the way that I create music as a conductor. So let me go ahead and screen share here. And by the way, Brenton, thank you for that very gracious introduction. I had a wonderful time working with Brenton and with about 100 other choral singers from around the world, actually, when we pulled together the BYU Hawaii virtual concert choir during the COVID period. And I'll talk about that a little bit. Can you all see this presentation? Is that coming up correctly? I'm going to assume that's a
We can see it. Yeah.
Great. Okay, wonderful. So I titled my presentation tonight, Conducting in Multicultural Spaces. But you'll see that I'm going to talk about some things beyond that sort of feed into this topic as well. And as Brenton mentioned, I'm Director of Choral Activities at Brigham Young University, Hawaii, right now in Laie, Oahu. Okay, so 2020, the pandemic hits, And all of the sudden, what I have been trained to do as a conductor shuts down entirely. In fact, it was one of the first things to shut down entirely because singers are considered super spreaders of COVID. And so suddenly I was facing a world without choral singing, and that seemed just unimaginable to me. So I began thinking creatively, and I thought, well, we've got Zoom, we have access to technology. As I mentioned before, with technology, there aren't any geographic barriers. So how can we still create a choral experience in a digital space and give people meaningful opportunities to connect with each other through song? And so, as Brenton mentioned in my bio, I founded virtualchoirconductor.com, and this is just a screenshot from the website. And we piloted this. I brought together probably 4 or 5 of my closest friends who are conductors, and we pooled our intellectual resources and designed, it was sort of an experiment, so to speak, in the beginning. We formed this giant virtual choir camp that took place over a week. We brought in about 80 children from all over the world, including South America and some places in Asia. And we had them rotate through various workshops online. This was all real time, this was all interactive. And then the biggest hurdle that we had to jump over was producing a virtual video. And I've actually watched both of your virtual videos that this group has produced, and I think that's so wonderful that you all have done that. I really enjoyed both of your pieces. And we wanted to do the same thing for our choir camp. But as I'm sure Brenton knows, a virtual choir project is a large project and typically takes, if you hire somebody to do it the way it's typically done, it can take between several weeks to several months to edit fully, with people submitting individual audio and individual video. It's just very time intensive. And we wanted to be able to teach the songs over the course of the week, and then on the very last day have a performance of all of these songs. So I had to very quickly come up with a way to generate virtual choir videos fast. And so I figured out some shortcuts, and we were able to do it. We had rehearsals Monday through Thursday. I stayed up almost all night Thursday generating 4 or 5 virtual choir videos, and then we showcased them at a concert the next day that everybody attended on Zoom. And then we had a Zoom celebration afterwards where members of the audience could hop on Zoom and our singers were there. And it felt almost like a live performance because we were all interacting with each other in real time. And the feedback was so positive that I thought, I need to make this available to other choirs. And so, as I mentioned, I founded virtualchoirconductor.com. And the first group to hire me to create virtual choir experiences for them was the Sun Lakes United Church of Christ. And they're a group similar to you, actually. It's a 55 plus community. A lot of folks who have, they've been involved in music their whole lives. They love to sing. And I'm going to show you the very first video that I pulled together with them. It's a beautiful piece called "Oh Love" by Elaine Hagenberg. You'll notice that many of the singers are not 55 plus. What we did was, since the choir was fairly small, we had about 20 to sometimes to 30 singers that would sing with us. We opened it up to members of the global community who wanted to perform with us. And we had quite a bit of interest. And from there, I started thinking about, what would it look like to form a virtual choir that really overcame all geographic boundaries and pulled from all countries in the world and all age ranges. And so this leads me into what I'm going to talk about next. I also produced a worldwide virtual Hallelujah chorus, and one of the professors at BYU Hawaii sang in that choir. And so when they were looking for someone to lead the BYU Hawaii concert choir during the COVID period, they knew it needed to be someone who had facility with technology and digital virtual choirs, because they couldn't meet in person. And so she recommended my name, as did a couple of other people, and I ended up getting this virtual position. So interestingly enough, I was leading the choirs at BYU Hawaii, but I was actually stationed in Utah, which is where I was from originally. Just a little bit quickly about BYU Hawaii. It's a very unique place, a very unique university. It's quite small. It has just over 3,000 students. But the amazing thing is that they represent over 70 different countries and cultures, mostly from the Pacific Rim. So a lot of Pacific Islanders and people from Asia. It's part of the church educational system for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And of course, it's a fully accredited university. But again, the student body is very unique. And so I was excited about that coming into this position, because I worked for 3 years as the director of performing arts and conductor of choirs at the American International School of Utah, which also had a very diverse student body. And I knew that there was a lot possible there. But students hadn't really heard of virtual choirs before. When we tried to get enrollment, we had maybe 15 students sign up. And I thought, this isn't really going to be the experience that I had envisioned for them. And so I placed a call for singers across the entire globe to audition for the BYU Hawaii Concert Choir. And they had to submit an audition just like they would for any other, higher level choir. And from the group that submitted auditions, I selected, it ended up being about 105 singers representing over 20 countries around the world. And that became the virtual group that Brenton sang with and many others sang with. And it was a wonderful experience. So I'm going to show you one of our lighter hearted videos that we created together, one of our virtual videos.
as a check a shaka. No worry, no fear, ain't no biggie, brother.
Cutting in, cutting up, cutting back, cutting out. Front side, back side, goofy for the what up.
Let's go jump and surf, soft and bumping, coasting with the motion of the ocean.
Whirlpool swirling, cascading, swirling.
Hawaii roller coaster ride.
There's no place I'd rather be
Then on the surfboard out at sea,
lingering in the ocean blue.
and if I had one wish come true,
I'd surf till the sun sets beyond the horizon.
Aviki-viki, my lohi-lohi, love and my kupapa and alu.
Flying by on a Hawaiian roller coaster ride.
Aviki-viki, my lohi-lohi,
Flying by
iinanulaha,
o kamoana hanupa-nupa.
la la la, ikamanana,
Eke kaimone, eke kaimone.
hey hey, like Hakaway, Hawaii roller coaster ride.
This again is available both on our Facebook page, which is just BYU Hawaii Concert Choir, and also on YouTube. If you Google or search Hawaiian Roller Coaster BYU Hawaii Concert Choir, it'll come up. But this was a great project for us because, again, I was sequestered in a little office here in Utah and yet was able to produce a video like this because we were in connection with everybody at BYU Hawaii, that small contingent of students, about 15 college level students who were actually on campus, filmed. And we brought in a high school choir to collaborate with us as well. And then, of course, you noticed all of the wonderful steel drummers and the Hawaiian percussion that we brought in. That was all led by Dr. Darren Duerden, who leads the band program at BYU Hawaii. So it became this wonderful, multifaceted, collaborative experience. We had one of our students who dances hula do some choreography, and you saw her and a couple of her friends performing. And again, it just sort of broadened all of our concept of what a virtual video can be and how it can connect people in very genuine ways, because we all know that the choral experience is about connection and about expressing something collectively. And there's a magic that happens in a live space that we do miss when we're in a virtual setting. And yet I found that a lot of the things we thought we wouldn't be able to get in a virtual setting actually are possible. That feeling of coming together, creating something, feeling proud of the product, making genuine, authentic connections with others, even when they live in completely different countries. And then I also found that it forced my singers to be a little bit more independent, because instead of listening to other people as they sang, they had to be able to sing their part on their own. And so it developed a different kind of a musicianship. And again, really brought people together from around the world in this unique multicultural space. So now we transition to me moving on campus once restrictions lifted enough that they were willing to let the choirs move forward at BYU Hawaii. So that was just this last semester. So I came in full of ideas, excited to work with the students. They were excited as well. I had from the outset over 100 students involved in my in my program in the 2 different choirs. And the choirs on campus at that point were the concert choir and the university chorale. Concert choir being the auditioned group, and university chorale being the anyone can join, no audition is required group. We even had some community members involved, which was great. But when I got there, they had just had a changeover in administration, and we had a brand new president and vice president of the university that were very focused on diversity, which is wonderful, decolonizing curriculum, meaning coming at curriculum from not just a Western perspective, and then also really serving our target students. And our target students, again, are the students that come from the Pacific Islands and Asia. And so when they sat down with me at our very first meeting, they said, hey, look, we know you're new here, but we are not really happy with the way the choirs have been run in the past. It's too Westernized. It's not multicultural enough. And we need you to transform the whole program, basically. And there was even a slight fear that they might cut the choral programs if administration didn't feel like they were genuinely serving student needs. And so I had this huge task in front of me, and I thought, I'm not a culture bearer, unfortunately, when it comes to, the cultures of the Pacific. I'm, a Caucasian. My background is, my ancestors come from Ireland, and I don't have a lot of knowledge about these cultures. So it was sort of an overwhelming prospect. And I thought, well, let me reach out to people who are experts and let's see what we can do. So the first person I reached out to, her name is Dr. Kiernan Steiner. She actually attended Arizona State University with me. She was a year behind me and received her doctorate the year after I did. And her entire dissertation was called Decolonizing the Choral Classroom. She's a transracial adoptee. Her father lives in Hawaii and is Filipino, and this is her birth father, and she recently reconnected with him, actually. So she was out in Hawaii visiting him in person, and I thought, wow, this is great. Let's have her come in and talk to us. So the very first week of classes, she came in, she spoke to our choirs. We brought in some of the administrators, some of the other music faculty, and she had sort of a theory of decolonization that hadn't developed yet into practice. So it was this idea that, yes, we need to approach things from a non-Westernized perspective. We need to privilege oral learning as much as we privilege things like sight reading. We need to break down walls so that people feel comfortable entering the choral experience, even if they've never had that experience before. So it can be this wide umbrella thing, and really genuinely reach out to multiple cultures. But she hadn't yet developed specific tools or ways to integrate that into the choral classroom. So again, it was sort of a daunting task for me, but I thought, I have resources at my disposal. My students themselves, as I said, come from over 70 countries. So why not reach out to the culture bearers and let them represent their own cultures and share with each other, and we will figure something out together along the way. So one of the things that we implemented right away was we had Hawaiian phrases that we learned every week. So week 1, we would repeat this phrase every day at the beginning of class, and then we had a different one for week 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. So we were engaging first with the local culture, and most of these phrases are very commonly used phrases that are sort of like proverbs. They have, something to teach. So that was one thing that we integrated into the classroom experience. We also rebranded the choirs. So they used to be the concert choir, as I mentioned, and the university chorale, both of which are very Westernized names. And I had several students from the Pacific Islands tell me, oh, I can't audition for choir because you require sight reading, and I don't know how to sight read. but many of them were amazing listeners and had really highly developed ears, and yet somehow they felt like their skills weren't worthy of integration into our program. And so I knew we had to change that. So after a lot of thought and meeting with, I had to get this passed by, it's called the Olelo Principals Committee on campus, which governs the use of all Hawaiian language on campus so that everything can be very culturally correct. But we rebranded the concert choir the Ho'olokahi Chamber Choir. I know that sounds like a mouthful, but Ho'olokahi means those who bring about unity or harmony, which I think is really beautiful. And it kind of helped crystallize our mission as a choir. We're not just any choir. We're not just singing because everybody sings at the university level and there's always a choral program. We're singing because we're engaging with the mission of the university, which is to bring about international peace building. And we do that through song. And so, as soon as we rebranded and students caught that vision and a sense of that mission, it was amazing how much progress we began making in the classroom. We also rebranded University Chorale, the non-audition group, as Seasider Singers. Our mascot is the Seasiders. So in a sense, it kind of sounds like a silly title, but we wanted it to just sound like a fun, open to everybody kind of experience. Come express your school pride, come from the community, come from wherever, and join us in song. So that's something that I'm very proud of us having done this last semester. We also completely re-envisioned what a concert can look like. This first concert, this is just 2 pages of an almost 40-page script that I pulled together line by line. It includes sound cues, it includes lighting cues, it includes videos, it includes audio clips, it includes slides and projections. We had pieces of art that the students generated. We had a narrative that flowed throughout. The students acted as narrators through the whole concert. We tied it into a specific Hawaiian legend. We featured music from all over the world. And it was this really wonderful experience. It was so much work. and I wasn't sure that the students were going to catch the vision and be able to be on board for all of this, because we had one rehearsal in the space to get all of this right. And it was kind of a mess at the dress rehearsal, but miraculously, it all came together in the final performance. And kind of, I think, gave students a glimpse, a more concrete glimpse of what's possible in a multicultural choral space. So just to give you an idea of how this worked, we had the street band. We collaborated with a lot of different groups on campus. We also collaborated with a high school group, a high school choir. We had hula dancers from the community come in. And the choir concerts typically pull in about 200 audience members, or have in previous years. Our town, Laie, is sort of isolated and our campus is relatively small. But this very first concert that we pulled off after only 6 weeks of rehearsal brought in 700 audience members. And I can't even tell you how staggering that was to see that many people there enjoying this thing that we had pulled together. And it was crazy because we had to have COVID protocols in place too. So the choir was masked, everyone was vaccinated. Vaccinations were required for everybody on campus, actually. And then the choirs wore masks until they sang, and then they could sing in sets of 15 minutes or less, and then they'd have to put their masks on again. So rather than just one choir coming on and singing, and then the next choir coming on and singing, we had a constant toggling back and forth between choirs, and then things in between and videos, and it was this whole multimedia experience. And we also had, as I mentioned, it was themed and there were different sections to the concert. It was all about a journey of light. And the students generated visual art as well. So we had visual art representing each section. And I mean, it was a really beautiful experience. It was music, it was dance, it was visual art. It was all of this multimedia stuff together, celebrating the cultures of all of our students. And you'll notice, for example, here at the bottom of the second page, I have Lohonolofatsa programmed. And if any of you are familiar with that piece, it's an African piece. And it's typically used, you know how gospel pieces and African pieces are often used as like an encore? That's typically how it's programmed on a concert. And I specifically did not want to do that. I wanted to integrate it into the meat of the concert. So I begin with a lot of numbers that would be typically used as encores to establish them as the meat of the program. They're not extra, they're not supplementary to the Western canon, they're integrated with the Western canon. So we begin with a kumulipo, which is a traditional Hawaiian creation chant that talks about the generation of light. We move into Hlohonolofatsa, which is an African piece. But we also integrated, for example, we had a mezzo-soprano guest come in and sing Mozart's Laudate with us, and we had strings playing with us. So it was this beautiful celebration of everything from the Western canon and outside of the Western canon as well. Here's just an example. We had these projections with every song that we sang so people could see the lyrics. This was the kumulipo that we sang that I just described, the creation chant. Here are all of the people we collaborated with. And again, I kind of learned this doing that virtual video of Hawaiian roller coaster. The more people you can get involved, the more exciting the collaborative experience is. So we had the Polynesian drumming ensemble involved, a Polynesian music ensemble, which was a lot of ukuleles. We had a salsa orchestra and percussionists. We had hula dancers. We had the Gist Mezzo. We had actors from a Tongan play come in and sing a Tongan hymn for us that was part of the play. We had our collaborative pianists. We had violin, cello, we had harp. We had handbells, and we had conch shells for one of our Hawaiian pieces that traditionally calls for conch shell blowing. So quite a crazy lineup of people to coordinate, but it was such a wonderful experience for us. And this is just an example of one of the sculptures that a student created for one of the sections of the concert called Born into Light. Okay, and then in our classroom, that gives you kind of a glimpse of how we approached our concert, but within the classroom itself, what I ended up doing is I had students teaching each other songs from their home countries and talking about their musical traditions and what was important to them. And it's really easy in the conversation about process versus product to think, well, either you can be a choir program that focuses on product and you're driving towards the concert and that's the goal, or you focus on education and process and you're bringing in multicultural elements. And what I found is that it's not a dichotomy, it's not either or. And the more richness you bring into the learning experience, the better the final product is going to be. And so we spent a lot of time, and it was sort of a brave thing to do with limited time. Like I said, we only had 6 weeks before our full concert, and it was an almost 2-hour concert, you know? But this brave thing that we did was we spent a lot of our class time just learning songs for the sake of learning without intending to perform those songs. So a lot of the songs that you're going to hear us sing in this next clip, we only worked on in class as a multicultural experience, and we never even performed them. It was for multicultural learning and sharing and giving students the opportunity to be the leaders in front of the group and to feel like they were not only welcome in the group, but leaders in the group and like they owned a piece of the experience. So this is a little glimpse into our rehearsal process.
I'm really very grateful for this experience to share a little bit about my culture and like the music that we sing in our country, just for you to kind of like empathize with people that like is struggling and fighting for a cause, you know. And in my country, this song was more about like unity, about like love, about hope, and about like hoping for a better future.
静静地陪我，
静静地陪我，
无数个春秋，
无数个春秋。晚霞和阳就在故山上里头，静静地陪我无数个春秋，带着故乡的思念，带着浓浓的乡愁。
ang dati kong aral. Ikamalama. 구름구름도 살며시
우리의 구원의 하나에
So I know that was a little long, but hopefully that was a fun glimpse into our rehearsal process. I love those students so much. They taught each other so much and really created something unique together. And you know what? I need to finish the story that I started, which was I had that conversation with administration, right? And they were wanting us to completely revamp the program, and I wasn't sure how. Well, after that first concert, which both the president and the vice president attended, they were completely blown away, and the future of our choirs is now secured, and we have a really strong platform that we can build on from here. Thanks to the students that were willing to jump in and create something, co-create something new with me. Let's see, how am I doing on time? All right, I'll go through this quickly. So as I mentioned before, I also taught for 3 years at the American International School of Utah, where I was on the senior management team, oversaw the whole performing arts program, and we had 6 choirs at the school. It was also a multicultural space, and perhaps even more notably, it was a neurodivergent space. There were a lot of students who would be considered neurodivergent. And what I found is that choir is one of the most remarkable communities that you can provide for people who come from divergent backgrounds, who have neurodiversity. It's such an amazing experience. And I want you to just look at this picture of these kids singing with all their hearts. This is a group of high schoolers, and you can just see in their faces how much they love to sing. But what you would not necessarily guess, and that's what I'm going to show you in this next slide, is that we had almost every face that you can see on that screen represents a child who's dealing with something fairly sizable. We had at least 2 of those students who were on the autism spectrum. We had PTSD. We had at least 9 cases of depression, clinical depression, 13 who dealt with clinical anxiety. We had abusive home environments, body dysmorphia, eating disorders, suicidal thoughts, self-harm, and even among these sweet kids, 2 suicide attempts during the time that I was at the school. But I want to show you, I interviewed one of my former students, Henry Riker, who went on to go to college and actually ended up majoring in something completely non-music related. I think he went into electrical engineering, but music was such an incredibly important part of his high school experience. So here's what he had to say. His name's Henry, and he gave me permission to share this. He said, "Until 9th grade, I was kind of an outcast. The life-changing bit happened when I went to AISU. Day 1 with choir was awesome. I was actually just writing a song about it earlier. I wasn't Henry the autistic kid. I was just that guy with the low voice. It was oddly refreshing to have nothing in common but music. For the next few years, it didn't matter that socializing wasn't really my thing. I had a group of people that all loved music as much as I did, and we couldn't afford to push each other apart over things like drama or autism. I am who I am today because of that choir, because it turns out that you don't need years and years of therapy to overcome the symptoms of autism. Sometimes you just need a little bit of music, or a lot." And then these are some anonymous quotes from other students, one who dealt with depression. "Choir saved my life. I have gone from depressed loner to having a place in the world." PTSD, "Singing helped me express my emotions at times when I felt like I couldn't. It's been my saving grace in so many ways." Eating disorder and depression, "It's mind-boggling to think that 32 bodies come together and with just one song send out 32 individualized messages." That was one of my singers in our chamber choir, which had 32 members. Anxiety, "There are certain chords that we sing that just release the endorphins. I often get high on singing because it feels so good." And finally, autism and anxiety. "The melodies have made me grow. The harmonies have molded who I am. I learned to listen, to focus. I have learned to balance and blend. The music is me." All of these sweet kids. And science backs what they're saying. Everything I've told you so far has been anecdotal, but of course there's real research behind it. There's evidence of oxytocin, which is a binding agent, and cortisol release, which lowers stress levels. And you can see, you would think that something like talking to a best friend might be the best way to handle, a situation in which you feel really anxious or tense. And it does have an effect, but you'll see that singing has a much more profound effect, which I don't know if you would necessarily expect, but it's true. There are lots of physical benefits to singing. I'm sure many of you know this already, but it releases feel-good hormones like endorphins and that bonding agent, oxytocin. It boosts immunity. It lowers blood pressure. It improves breathing. And it just improves overall health and well-being. And there are a lot of psychological benefits, right? It lowers anxiety and stress. It serves as a kind of meditative exercise because we're inhaling and exhaling at a measured rate. Studies have shown that people's hearts start to beat as one when they sing together, and that beating, that tempo of the beating mirrors the tempo of the music. So, I mean, it's really profoundly powerful in measurable ways. Just to follow up on this briefly, I won't go into this too much because I know we're running out of time, but I conducted a study several years ago in St. Petersburg, Russia, with kids who had come out of orphanages who had reactive attachment disorder, which is a very common disease. And it comes from a lack of connection and interaction when they're young. And what it leads to is violent outbursts, and an inability to connect either with peers or with adults, a difficulty internalizing really abstract things like love or like emotion. And so what I ended up doing is I pioneered this new form of singing therapy using Eurythmics, which is a form of music education. And Eurythmics is designed, it's mostly used with small children when you're teaching them piano or violin, and it fosters a self-awareness and a mind-body connection. For example, as you play the violin, your teacher might ask you to walk as you play in time with the tempo of the piece so that you feel the internalization of the tempo. Or if you're playing in a string quartet, they might ask everybody to move in the same way with the phrases so that as a unit, they're feeling that movement of the phrases together. And I started to wonder, well, couldn't this be used to work with groups of kids who don't necessarily have a musical background, but to help them form this critical mind-body connection that's missing in kids with reactive attachment disorder, and to help them internal or externalize things that are internal and make more concrete things that are abstract: emotions, love, connection. And so I conducted a study, and it was actually very successful with kids between the ages of about 2 and 6. It was a short study, and I would have to go back, and I'm hoping someday to go back and perform a longer study. But the outcome was very, very promising. So this is powerful stuff. So with that in mind, I try to integrate elements of Eurythmics into my choral rehearsals, believing that they're powerful, believing that movement and music fused together have a really profound impact. And just as an example of this, some of you may, have backgrounds in music theory. That's wonderful. All of us who are trained musicians certainly do, who have had to go through the Western collegiate system. We all know about Roman numerals and how to label things in a phrase. But what was always so interesting to me is when I would tell people, because my first degree is actually in music theory and composition, that was my bachelor's degree, and people would act as if it was this magical gift that I had that no one else could possibly replicate unless they were blessed with a certain talent or a genius. And I kept thinking, well, no, it's just like writing a sentence. You build a sentence using grammar, you build music using music theory. And if you understand music theory on an intuitive level, you can form music as easily as you form a sentence in normal speech. We don't sit down and write what's the subject and the predicate and the modifier every time we create a sentence. We just create a sentence. We know how it sounds. We know how it moves. We know how the grammar works intuitively. It's built into us. And so again, I started thinking, well, couldn't we use this same approach when teaching music theory in the choral classroom? Couldn't we help, in addition to helping people, learn solfege, learn sight reading? That's great. Learn about chord structures if that's something they're interested in. But a quicker and more efficient way to the end that we actually want. And the reason we want people to know about theory is so that they can be more informed performers and more musical performers, so that they know where a phrase is going. And there's a much quicker way to accomplish this by helping them feel the movement of chords. So just as a quick example, I won't make you do this because I know that many of you won't be able to stand and sit again. But what I do when I run this exercise with my choir is I have them, so there are 3, if you boil down all chord functions into 3 major categories, there's the tonic function, which is sort of where you just kind of hang out. It's like home base, right? There's the predominant function, which is moving somewhere. And then there's the dominant function, which pulls you back towards resting. And that's really all that music is, right? It's either resting, or it's going somewhere, or it's leaning back into repose. And so I'll have students sit for resting chords. They'll stand for a chord that's going somewhere, and they'll lean back towards their chair for a chord that has a dominant function. And we'll listen to music like this. Let me show you this. Standing, backwards, and then sitting again, right? And it shows you the chords right there. You can also do this in other styles. So here's a blues progression. Oops. Sitting to this one, then you stand. Oh, sorry, not yet. Sitting. And stand. And so forth. You can do it with pop progressions. You can do it with longer, more complex progressions. But anyway, that's a fun exercise that I like to do with groups that I give presentations to and with my own choir. And the point of all of this is that together, music and movement activate critical regions of the brain, facilitating connections of all kinds, right? Facilitating connections between the people involved in the experience, within the brain itself, neurological pathways, connection between the mind and the body, connection between what's on the page and what you're singing. And that's what we all want to get to, right? In choral performance is music that lives. Music that's not just notes on a page, but that has something to say, that's going somewhere, and that everybody is contributing to for that sense of shared ownership and togetherness. So I'll just end here. This is a picture that I love recently. I think this was taken about a month ago of my choir. It was not posed or staged. This was literally just in the middle of us singing one of our pieces at a performance. And I just love the joy and engagement. This kind of stuff that I've been talking about works, right? Getting movement involved in it, fostering connection, multicultural sharing, building a safe space, fostering unity, driving towards excellence, using multiple modalities of learning. If we can capitalize on the diversity that exists in a classroom, it's really profound. And it's full of joy. It's such a joyful experience to make music with these students. I'll end. This is my very last video that I have for you. This is one of the pieces that we performed recently, which I think you'll enjoy. And if any of you are interested in more information on decolonizing the music room, there's a great web resource that I've given you here, decolonizingthemusicroom.com. And I would love to answer any questions you might have.
Let's give Dr. Erica Glenn a hand here. Woo! Great. That was great. Right. So just wanted to see if you had time for questions. It's a nighttime here, but I know you're during the day.
Sorry that we went over.
No, fine here. We're fine where we are. So it's good. So good. All right. Just making sure. So we're going to open it up for some questions and comments. Well done, Erica. It's always enjoyed seeing what you're doing. All right. So go right ahead. There she is.
Hi.
Then
Hi, I enjoyed your performance. Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
this is a gifted musician here. She plays the piano very well.
Wonderful. So nice to meet you.
I'm glad to meet you, and it was wonderful hearing your music.
Oh, thank you.
Good. All right. We got another choral guy here, and
I'm Alan Glinowitz.
Hi.
I've sung in choirs since I was in 6th grade, and the last group, you have a great many things in common with the International Voices Houston. In Houston, Texas, they have at least between 5 and 10 of their concerts on YouTube. You can hear what they had. They have been. I was with them for 9 years, but there's a great many things that they have in common, and so I still remember the very first song that was ever taught in 6th grade. As a matter of fact, I think I was in an inner city school in Chicago, and there was a lot of arguments and fights and stuff going on. So they divided it into 2 groups, the girls and the boys choirs, and we sang, and it worked out very well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I'll have to check them out. Thank you.
Many church choirs since then. The pandemic caused them to break down. They had about 150 members at one time from 40 different ethnic groups. They sang folk songs. The original languages were affiliated with the United Nations and acted as ambassadors to minority groups.
I love
and all
that.
their concerts were done in the other languages. So there's a lot of material there, far more than I could describe.
That's wonderful.
I'd love to sing with it, but I haven't been singing for 3 years, and so at my range, if I lose most of the baritone side.
But you sang in our virtual choir, though.
Yes, that was so fun for me to watch. I very much enjoyed your virtual videos.
Yeah, if you get a chance, sing. Mark Vogel is the director of that choir, and I could give you other information, but you can see, but more for yourself, of the types of things that we do, and how I give you some of the other people that get.
Yeah, Erica, they're a choir that also does a lot of international. I don't know the director personally, but they do a lot of that type of music for maybe perhaps a programming idea or something future for your choir.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that they have a lot in common. I wouldn't be surprised if you wanted to do things together. And they're the last few were virtual choirs, but they're coming back. They did last 2 concerts with 75 members or so. So you're
okay. Here we is. Go ahead.
Hi, I enjoyed your presentation. I'm Marion, and I have less of a musical background. I did sing in choir in church from the time I was about 7 years old until I graduated from high school. And just very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
Oh, good.
All right.
Excuse me. I enjoyed it so much. I love music. And I tried to sing in the choir, in the church choir, and they told me to move my big mouth and long that the voice out.
Oh, no.
That I lived in a farm, so just to get back at them, I went in the farm and I scream and sing, and the neighbor, I was gonna go out of my mind, but I love music. I like opera, Luciano Pavarotti,
Yes.
because we live in an area in Modena, Italy, and I just enjoy that so much. Thank you very much. I enjoy listening to her Brenton singing too.
Oh,
Wonderful
we just
voice.
had my voice teacher in undergrad who did a lecture on Pagliacci. And yeah, that's it. We did some Italian opera stuff. So that was fun. All right. Another type of lecture.
Hi, Erica.
Hi.
It is so nice to meet you. You're so young to be so talented.
Oh, bless your
And- But I love music. I'm like the rest of them. I just love music. And it's been such a wonderful pleasure to hear your choirs and hear you. Do you sing?
I do.
You do, okay. But thank you for the presentation. It was wonderful.
Oh, I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Erica. It was lovely. And I also enjoy all types of music. Oh, I don't participate in any, but I love it. And it was and I love seeing that beautiful island. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I add
Are the shots of the ocean in the virtual video beautiful? Makes you want to go to Hawaii, huh?
Oh,
Oh,
I've
yeah.
had for years.
We're gonna have to demand a vacation up there sometime.
Come visit anytime.
Perhaps one of these years I will. Be
It's
up there.
Sharon again. I've been singing since I'm like Alan, six years old.
Mhm.
And I'm at now 85. I spent over 50 wonderful years in my church choir. And I love music. Thank you.
Okay. Good. So you got a wide variety of people that were here, and you'll get some more when it's recorded and stuff. So I really, from my perspective, it was a wonderful lecture, and I know you're very knowledgeable in music and the different cultures. I love the last piece, Stars. I'm very familiar with that composer, Eric Eschenbals, and yes, very well done. I'm trying to think what question to say. Why? What made you inspired to do all these people from around the world? The virtual choir I did before you went back to this semester? Was it something that BYU said, hey, Erica, we need you to do this to keep you know, or was it something that you volunteered to do? And then the second question I have was, how was the experience in making the virtual choir videos, in editing everybody? Like, talk about your process with that.
Sure. So first of all, no, the expectation from BYU Hawaii was just that I would come in and lead these 15 students in a Zoom meeting, but I wanted them to have a really rich experience. And I knew that it would be a richer experience if we got more people involved. And I also just wanted to make connections out in the broader global community. And someone, it's so funny, I don't even know who added me to the group, but someone had added me to Eric Whitaker's virtual choir group. And I didn't even participate in that piece, but somehow I got added. And I thought, wow, there are so many people here who are passionate about choral singing. They come from everywhere all over the world. I'm just going to post something and talk about the audition process. And, you know, maybe we'll get 10 or 15 extra people singing with us, and that'll be great. And instead, as soon as I posted, I was just inundated with audition submissions. And you know, it's not easy to sit down and create an audition and send it in. And so I was just so impressed by all of these people who were that committed. And I made it very clear in the verbiage. I posted the syllabus and everything. I said, this is an actual college course. you don't just submit a video, you're actually expected to show up to weekly rehearsals. Here's what the commitment looks like. And again,
Right.
ended up with over 100 people. I didn't accept everybody, but almost everybody I was able to accept. And so I did it to myself. I took it on myself, and it made the editing process a little harder because there were so many voices to edit, but I'm really glad that we did it that way. It led to some really rich cultural exchange. And in terms of actually editing the videos themselves, as you know, Brenton, instead of having everyone video themselves individually, which my computer just doesn't have the processing power to handle over 100 videos at once, instead, I would take a screenshot video of the Zoom session with everyone lip singing along with the recording. And then, I would do that I would do that for each section. And then we would come up, and we had basically 2 Zooms per section. So it would be then 8 videos that I would be dealing with instead of over 100, which goes a lot faster. So,
and then you combine that video, you combine those. Okay. Because we had to do it each individual resident. And that was.
Yeah, and in the beginning when Zoom was still a little clunkier, they've worked out some of the bugs, but I would have to go in and I would have to fix the timing on some people's videos so that everybody was in sync with each other because of lag times. Not everybody would be right together. And I mean, it was still kind of a pain to load in all of those videos. And then the audio, yes, I had to load in people's voices one by one and clean things up and throw on a little bit of reverb and do some EQing and clean up mistakes and, work on balance and levels. But that process per video probably took about 2 hours for audio and closer to like 4 or 5 hours for video. So video always took longer. But yeah, I became really good at just kind of throwing things into Final Cut Pro. And then from there, taking it into iMovie to do some simple zooming in and out and to add backgrounds and make it a little bit more visually interesting. But yeah, in the very beginning, when I was working on these projects, I would say it was about 15 hours per video. And then I cut it down by the end to about 3 or 4 hours per video.
Very good. Very good. I love the topic. I think, again, I've never been to Hawaii, but I've heard things that there's a wide variety of people. You talked about, the cultures, the different cultures, that it was very important to represent each culture and make it learning for the kids to do. How many countries were represented in the last semester? You mentioned there's a South Korean and also Mio, Italian, and
so I never conducted a survey to see exactly which countries all of our students were from. At BYU Hawaii in general, there are over 70 countries represented. In my choirs, if I were just to offer a guess, I would say probably 30 to 40, but a significant
different countries.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. You have a question? Yes. Go ahead, Alan. Let me put it here.
Erica, I noticed that you stressed the sensitivity to the mood in a lot of your the sensation in your dance of it. And I noticed something that when we were doing the preparation for one of the concerts, we always do a lot of different ethnic groups when we were singing, and we sang the selection of hymns from different traditions.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, was that in singing these different things, when I hit the singing the chord structure of the Nordic hymns, I really struck a nerve in me. It's almost like my whole skeleton was vibrating. So I could tell very much where the origin of my ethnic background is by just singing the different things. So certain things just feel right. They feel as if you really belong in those things. And certain chord structures in the German Requiem that will actually send my skeleton into vibration. crushes the thing. So I don't know if you've noticed the same kind of thing, but in some of these pieces, but it's not imaginary, let me tell you.
Yeah, for sure. And I noticed among my students that it was so meaningful for them to be able to bring the pieces that do that for them and share it with their friends from other cultures. To bring what resonates most closely with you and to share it with others. And there's certainly a sense of like, this is my heritage and this is what resonates with me. But it's amazing too how much you can expand your own understanding and your listening and your interpretation to also really internalize the music of other cultures and to broaden your own range of experiences.
And especially since I couldn't understand the words.
Yeah.
I didn't know the meaning of the words at all, so it had to be the pure emotion coming through.
That's beautiful.
But I just wanted to alert you to that kind of thing. That I'm sure you noticed it yourself. But
You mean the Brahms Requiem, right? The German Requiem? The Ein Deutsches Requiem.
Oh, yes, I love Brahms Requiem.
Well, there's Mozart's too, but then the German I can think of as Brahms.
it was settled by the Gulf people. So
Yeah.
they came to
Yeah.
the island there, and then they populated that particular part.
Right. Well, yeah, very true. I think that's very true that music can make an impact. And there's something about singing in a choir that's none other.
Right, exactly.
Right. When you sing with a choir, you're a body of people that you can control things with your voice that you can't do with an organ, you can't do with a piano, you can't do with a trumpet, maybe a little bit violins, but we can control expression. How many times we can sing an ah vowel 1,000 different ways. Different ways, but having unification of vowel, understanding the piece, and your music, and Erica, you're really one of the best in terms of multicultural program. I mean, I don't know many directors that do it as well as you do. You add maybe even the stuff that we did Russian music, and then we did Bridge Over Troubled Water, and many other pieces, the other Hawaiian piece, which I can't remember what we did, but what was the one we did with the boys choir? Yes. Yeah. So
well, I mean, as you say, there's something remarkable about a choir because it's not an instrument external to you. You are the instrument. It's a very vulnerable form of expression. You're bringing yourself to the table when you're bringing your voice to a choir, right? And those scientific studies that I referenced with the release of oxytocin show that release of oxytocin only happens in choral settings as opposed to like a band or an orchestra setting. So certain kinds of bonding happen in those settings as well, but that release of oxytocin has only been shown to happen in a choral ensemble setting. And as you say too, it's amazing how diverse and versatile this instrument is that we each hold within ourselves, right? It can do so much, and really every other instrument that's been created has been modeled on this instrument, on the human voice. And it's something that's inherently playable out of the box, even though we can work towards improving it, of course. But it's really kind of an open umbrella experience in the way that, like to play in an orchestra at a certain level, you have to have years and years and years of experience. Whereas to sing in a choir, you have to have a good ear and a willingness to jump in and try, and that's about it.
I think that's the key too, is that you have to learn to, this goes into the diversity thing. We have to learn as a society and a choir and a choral person to learn different cultures, to learn different music that we're not used to. Like when I was growing up, maybe I did church music, but I never did Russian music. I never did, Swahili music, but those or Hawaiian music for that nature. I learned Hawaiian music through you, Erica, and never had that. But to have the idea of learning different cultures and embracing each other's cultures and bringing it into one body, I think is very important, especially in the 21st century as we go forward into choral music and stuff. And I got to say, you're doing a really good job, Erica. You're a good friend, and to Friends Home, and we're very grateful for everything that you brought to us and what you continue to do in the choral world. It's really remarkable.
Well,
My last question would be is, how did you get into music? How did it start with you? How did you get into music and to get where, because you do multiple things like myself. You direct, you sing, you teach. I mean, you do a lot of different things. You compose music. So how did you get into music? And then what inspired you to go into choir music as a living?
So, I mean, I can't imagine ever not being into music. It's been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. In fact, my mom likes to share the anecdote of me when I was young and before I could speak, whenever I was hungry as a baby, I would beep. I would make like beeping sounds because that's the sound that the microwave made when my bottle was heated up. And then whenever I was sleepy, I would start to hum the lullaby that my mom would sing to me. And this was before I could communicate with words. So I was communicating with music before I could verbally communicate. And I began taking piano lessons when I was 5 or 6. I started singing with the Utah Children's Choir when I was 8 and sang with them until I was 16. Sang, of course, with my school choirs growing up. Started piano lessons, or I already said I started piano lessons. I accompanied for several of my school choirs growing up. And I began composing when I was fairly young too. I think my first composition was when I was 6. And I was very involved in I was very involved in musical theater when I was young. I played over a dozen lead roles in musicals by the time I was in my teens. And I wrote a musical when I was 12, a full-length musical that was produced at a couple of venues in Utah, and just fell in love with the collaborative process of creative production. I loved that musicals bring together dance and music and visual arts and kind of thread them all together into this wonderful experience. So I decided that composition was what I really wanted to go into. And that was what my bachelor's was in. I also wrote a musical in my 20s that went to the New York Musical Theater Festival, and I continued performing as a musical theater performer. And I ended up doing, I think you read in my bio, I did 2 different master's programs. The first was in music composition again. The second was in the arts and education after I had taught for a year at Dean College and the Franklin School for the Performing Arts. I was teaching composition and piano and voice. And I had so many ideas for ways to innovate the educational experience. And I thought at that point that I wanted to open my own performing arts school. So I went back for a second master's in the arts and education. And throughout this whole process, it's interesting. I always chose to take choral conducting classes and lessons at every school that I went to. And I was always singing with, whatever the top group was at the school that I attended. Choir was such an important part of my life. But I hadn't specifically considered choral conducting until I landed in the position at the American International School of Utah, where I was essentially building the performing arts program from the ground up, and we needed a choral director, and I was by far the one with the most experience. So I hopped in and completely, as I said, fell in love with the students I taught and with the transformative effect that singing had in their lives. And it made me decide to go back and do my doctorate in choral conducting because I realized that I wanted to do conducting at a higher level and that I probably had better go back and get an actual degree in it. So that's what led me here.
That's incredible. So you had 2 masters and then you were hired at that school in Utah, and that inspired you to pursue this in the collegiate level, I assume.
Right. Yes.
Now, how did you get in contact with the BYU for that? How did you?
Yeah, well, as I said, it was literally because I became an expert in virtual video creation and they needed someone to lead their choirs virtually. And so as they were asking around, who would you recommend? 2 separate people recommended my name. And then I had to go through the same application process as everybody else. But I think it perhaps, gave me a leg ahead because I had had a couple of people recommend my name. And then once they saw what I did in the virtual setting, when a full-time live position opened up, I applied and was selected for that position.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you.
They love you.
They love you, man.
Oh,
they
I
love you.
You know what? You guys kind of remind me of, for 3 years, I conducted the Sun Lakes United Church of Christ Choir, which I think I mentioned was a 55 plus community, and we would do performances every Sunday and have a once a week rehearsal. We also had a handbell choir, which was really fun. And they were some of my favorite people in the world, and I miss them so much. So thanks for kind of being a stand-in for that for me today.
Well, we are good friends. They've made friends with you, and it's been a joy. And thank you so much, Erica.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. And what you talked about. That's to me. Yeah, right. So thank you. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Let's give Erica, Dr. Glenn, one more hand here. And it is a pleasure having you. And thank you for watching. And we'll continue to have these lectures from time to time. Thanks for watching, and take care.